Hey everyone, welcome to episode 1 of the Miami Tech Pod. I am Cesar Fernandez and I'm joined by co-host Brian Breslin, Maria Durchi, and Will Weinrob. For those very few who don't know, Brian is the founder of Refresh Miami and the director of the University of Miami's Launchpad. He's been a serial entrepreneur his whole life. Maria Durchi is the investments director at the Venture City and the executive director of Refresh Miami. And Will Weinrob is the director of product at Net2Phone and former co-founder and CEO of Live Ninja. He's also the host of Lessons via Leaders, a weekly podcast bringing you valuable insights from some of the top entrepreneurs, founders, and thought leaders in their respective fields. So a lot of exciting stuff to talk about. But before we get into it, how's everyone feeling about 2020, finally being behind us, Maria?
Well, I'm scared to say it's behind us. There's a few days, and if 2020 is telling me anything, it's, shit can go really awry really quickly. So talk to me on January 1st.
That's a good point. We can't jinx the final days here. Will, what are your thoughts as we wrap up in 2020?
Oh man, I'm looking to turn the page for sure. But 2020 has brought some exciting things. We're going to get into some of the things that it has brought, to Miami and to our community. But I am looking forward to a fresh start for sure.
Yeah, that's true for sure. We there is some, there's things to be optimistic all around. Brian, Miami Tech since 2004, Breslin, how are you doing?
Oh man, I'm tired. This has been a long year for everybody, I think. But I'm looking forward to 2021 as sort of a clean slate that we can sort of all set some, good foundational practices and, take the best things that happen in 2020 and grow with them,
Yeah, absolutely. Well, there's, a lot of stuff to get into. So let's jump right in. I figured it would be kind of interesting for, and an obvious starting point for this podcast to talk about the, what everyone seems to be talking about, which is this great migration of, folks in tech in Silicon Valley and New York moving to Miami. And I guess my question for all of you is really broadly, like, is this going to happen, right? Is this going to be an effort of sustainable effort with local community building, or will Miami kind of become this go-to, destination for wealthy VCs and tech executives to live half the year in vacation? Will, what do you think?
I'm bullish on what's happening. I'm really excited to see what's happening. But I think there's something greater at play that's beyond Miami, frankly, where it's just kind of a big reset into where people want to live versus where they have to live. I think that's going to we're partial, obviously, to the 305 and to this community. But, for so long, people had to live in certain, geographic locations, San Francisco, New York, Boston, Chicago, what have you, because of their job. And now, things being location agnostic and more remotely, you kind of reset the conversation, and it's about where do you want to live and what's the most appealing place to live. And Miami's always going to be at the top of the list when you have that conversation. Great weather, no state income tax, amazing restaurants and nightlife and things to do here. It's a cosmopolitan city, quick access to Europe, and obviously a direct flight to pretty much anywhere. So I think I think this is real. I think Miami needed that conversation to happen, where again, if you didn't have to live in a certain place, where would you want to live? Miami is in a pole position to take advantage of that. So I see that. I don't think this is a fad. I think this is really happening. The longevity of it, who knows? I hope that people live here and love it and stay for 5, 10, 15, 20 years and beyond, start companies here, fund companies here. But that remains to be seen. But I do think this is real, and it's exciting for the community.
Yeah, I want to add to what Will said. I completely agree. It's kind of, and there was an article recently about, I think it was titled The Rise of Everywhere. And I think this is a great opportunity for cities around the world to kind of be able to level the playing field. I think Miami's well positioned for more folks to come here because of the quality of life. And I also feel like founders were looking for, I think while it might be VCs moving here at first, although there are some founders, I think some founders were scared to move here because of the signal it might send to VCs that they weren't serious. And now the VCs are saying, no, it's okay. I think that the founders are going to be like, oh, okay, now a VC won't look at me awkward if I say I'm based in Miami. So hopefully, that'll give, I guess, permission to some of these startup founders that, hey, you can live in some of these other places and not be looked down upon by the VC community.
Yeah, I'd hate to be the founder who raised a round, and one of the conditions of raising that round was moving to San Francisco within the last 12 months. Brian, question for you. Do you feel that? Do you think that this is founders and engineers and product folks at tech companies that were just frustrated with ultimately frustrated with Silicon Valley, frustrated with like how crowded it gets. Obviously we've all heard that there's some serious problems with San Francisco as a city, and just executing against that and doing something about it. And that's what makes it more real? Or do you feel like there's kind of people that are still in this try it out phase? I'm going to move here, get an Airbnb for a month, test it out. Do I actually like living here? And then if the answer is yes, then, set down permanent roots.
I mean, I think there's a lot of threads there, right? There's, on one hand, Florida's always been a place where people come and spend part of the year, right? It used to be the snowbirds coming down, the semi-retirees and all that stuff. But now I think we're seeing that people are more flexible and more willing to try different things. And I think we're also seeing that a lot of people were in Silicon Valley begrudgingly, right? They were there only because they had to or thought they had to for their careers, right? And so now the sort of quality of life factors are coming into play where it's like, well, if I don't have to step over the guy who's doing fentanyl on my doorstep, maybe I won't, and if I can do like 6 months in Miami and save, $3,000 a month on rent, that pays for my kids' private schools, or pays for, 2/3 of a Bitcoin or whatever, so there's a lot of things that this opens up from a, liquidity standpoint, or from a like flexibility of what you want to do with your life, right? Because before, many of these people were making 6-figure salaries, but then saving single digits a year,
Yeah, that makes sense. And, you three in particular, you're very much OGs of the Miami tech community. You're decade plus at this and have built companies here and have worked within companies as well. So you've seen, the entire slow burn of a rise into growing the tech community. But, I think there's this moment, and we're all familiar with it because we're on Twitter a lot, but there's this moment where, Mayor Suarez kind of fires off a tweet, it goes viral, and then it really starts the, echo chamber of people realizing that this could be a great place to relocate, to start a business, et cetera. We've had a few on-brand moments on Twitter in Miami. I think we should definitely talk about that. But I have a real question for you three, and we can start here. Will the people leaving Silicon Valley and New York, will they accept or reject cafecito?
In what way? Meaning, like, they're not going to know what this little thumbnail of coffee is, and just take 5 of them at once.
100%. Yeah.
This is a shot. So just take the shots. It's just like, slam them back.
There's no tutorial. There are no instructions. I think the coffee cups are the instructions, but that's not really self-explanatory.
That's
Maybe
true.
we should go in little cafes around the Miami.
That's
hey,
true.
If somebody comes to the window and looks very confused, please make sure they don't drink the entire colada.
Right. So if you're from San Francisco, you come up to the window. There's a lady that most likely won't speak English.
You're confused by the window in general.
Right. Exactly. But she's going to hand you a cup of coffee with basically 7 little shot, plastic shot glasses. Don't take 7 shots right away. Right. I think that's a given. Some
Right.
people have
Do you guys
thought
think we need a QR code instruction video that they can scan at the window so they understand the etiquette, the rules, the safety precautions, and all these other things? Maybe we have it animated and like voiceover by a pit bull.
You know what we need to do? We need to get like Dave Portnoy down here and do like a cafecito review where it's like one cup, everybody knows the rules. Just because I mean, I could see people thinking it's waste and drinking the whole thing, ending up in the ER and having a terrible first few weeks here. So we definitely need a little bit of a campaign around this.
I agree. This will serve as the public service announcement. Do not take more than a couple shots of cafecito on your first trip to Calle Ocho.
Yeah, and look, it's kind of been central to the mayor's. He's had cafecito chats.
Right.
He's inviting folks into the office to.
But at least
chat
there,
about.
you're under the mayor's supervision. Like he's not going to let anything. He's not going to let you overdose on cafecito. If you're visiting the city. So we need guidelines when you're outside of the mayor's supervision.
That's a good point. Other on-brand moments. Legendary kind of tech executive and investor Keith Raboy bought a house here. I think Brian, you noted this first. He has a remarkable fish tank within his house. Very Miami, very on brand. Brian, what do you feel is the most amazing thing about Keith Raboy's fish tank?
I mean, price aside, I mean, I heard that the fish tank alone was $1 million, right? But I think the fact that you need a PADI licensed scuba diver to clean it, I think is what takes the cake. I mean, that's the most Miami thing, where like you buy something that you can't even maintain yourself, even if you wanted to, right? I think the next phase of like how Miami is if he gets a giant shark and puts it in there, but we'll see. We'll see what kind of fauna he puts in there, or what kind of fish he acquires from the bay,
Yeah, extinct coral reef in the fish tank, like some type of I hear you.
In his defense, he bought that was with the house, so we should question the guy who lived there prior.
That's a good point. Maybe this is being a little bit presumptive about Keith and his taste for extravagant fish tanks. I mean, it could have been it was a package deal.
Yeah, right. It could have either been a Russian oligarch who was living there, or David Guetta, or any number of Miami characters, right?
And so the other on-brand moment that I saw on Twitter, I think, Maria, you may have mentioned you saw this. I forgot exactly who tweeted it, but it was like, does it count if I move to Miami from Kendall? Who was that tweeted?
I think it was JC Alvarez that was tweeting to the mayor. If that counts, if he'll get invited to Cafecito, maybe.
Yeah, he may want to look for flights to see what the going rate from Kendall to Miami is these days. That's going to be kind of segueing into I think a shock factor. People don't really realize how sprawled out Miami-Dade County is. They know the iconic destinations. They know Wynwood and Miami Beach and downtown Brickell, etc. But you can just drive for an hour in traffic west and still be within the county before you get to the Everglades. And sometimes, so that's going to be an interesting thing. But it's cool. I think people are going to certainly be proud of the different neighborhoods here if we do see a big migration over. We'll see.
I think that's one of the biggest things we need, I think, to let people know that, like, some people that come to Miami and they've only really experienced Miami Beach and Wynwood. And there's so many different little areas that make Miami special. Calle Ocho, Brickell, even to the north, right? Fort Lauderdale has amazing things. I mean, you're just scratching the surface over what, Miami has to offer. And then from, if you're a family moving here, you got communities like Kendall, like Pinecrest, like Doral, and things like that are also beautiful, that have their own communities and their own distinctive feels. So it's a double-edged sword. Miami is a sprawled out city where you definitely need a car to kind of get around. It's not kind of urban dense like a San Francisco or New York or Chicago or Boston. But on the other side of it, there's a lot of land here. And there's a lot of different feels. So if you're looking for more of a small town feel, like, Brian and I, we live in Miami Shores, and that is a very much like a small town kind of feel, versus like kind of a mainstream city like you would if you lived in Brickell. So it's kind of like what you're looking for. Miami has a little bit of everything to offer. So it's worth exploring all these different areas if you are coming. Don't stay to just the beach in Wynwood.
Do you think companies are going to take a centralized, hub approach and pick one neighborhood and really, expand that neighborhood's presence of tech workers and cool companies that are being built here? Or do you think it's going to be decentralized where we're going to see kind of price per square foot driving the decision for founders to move headquarters into Miami, and you'll see Coconut Grove based businesses and like Little Havana based businesses and like just not Brickell, Miami Beach, Woodwood?
Absolutely. I mean, so much of this is probably driven by where the founders live, and the fact that if you're living in Edgewater, you're not going to want to drive out to West Kendall to go to work every day, because that's going to cost you an hour in each direction, right? And so you're likely to go and look for like the cheapest either warehouse or Class B, maybe Class A if you're well funded by Shervin or someone else, and base it on that, right? But like you're not going to trade the lost productivity of going out to the burbs to set up your office if you and your founding team all live in a certain area,
Yeah, that's a good point. Also, like where your kids are going to school, right? I think school zones still kind of drive that decision for a lot of people. We have a lot of really urban areas that are densely populated and somewhat luxurious, even in the city, where if you live there, you're almost certainly within the school zone of an underperforming school, or if you moved out to the suburbs further out, you may have better schools in the district. So that's a reality that I think people moving here with families are probably going to realize very quickly. So
yeah, I agree with that.
What else do you guys think in terms of the assimilation of tech industry types moving over here in Miami? Maria, do you feel like there are some phrases that people are going to know or need to know moving into Miami? I mean, we almost have our own language here.
Yes. So one that I feel like will come up often, and I mean, I think Pitbull has helped folks who are not from here get familiar with this term, but dale.
That was a good one.
Yeah, it's not Dale. It's not, when you read it, it's not Dale.
It's not Dale.
I was actually reading something in English and I was like, why does this say dale? And I was like, oh no, they meant Dale.
So you default to dale when you see it.
I default to dale. Because it can be used very interchangeably with a lot of terms like go ahead or like, yeah, like, dale.
Hurry up.
That's one. Que vola, obviously, is like, hey, Cuban way of saying what's up, what's going on.
That's going to be a foreign one for a lot of people. Like this may be the first time people have ever heard that.
Yes, I think that should be immediately something they learn. That's easy. They can get into an Uber. And that's another thing. You're going to have to pick up a few words if you're planning on using Uber because 99% of them will not speak English.
That's a good point.
But it's a great opportunity to practice your Spanish.
Free lessons.
Yeah, free lessons. And I think that's something else I wanted to mention is while it might sound like Spanish to everyone, every country has very different idioms and like ways of saying things. So you're going to get to learn the difference between Venezuelan Spanish, Cuban Spanish, Puerto Rican Spanish, Argentine Spanish. By the time you're done here, you're going to be able to like hear someone speak and say, they're from Colombia. So there's a lot of differences between all of the Spanish speaking countries.
What else? Any other phrases you think?
Will, Brian?
I mean, I think one of the most iconic words that people use so often here is bro. I mean, bro is
bro.
Like as someone who grew up in Kendall, like that was your every third word. Bro was used for both male or female. It was and it's sort of, it stands on its own, and it's also used as sort of like a preposition. Like you could, you're shocked and you're like, bro, come on, And then
It has
like you
9
also
different
throw it
meanings,
in
right?
with like Spanish. You say like, pero bro, come on, So I think that's one of those like interchangeable ones, and it's similar to like bro is used in other parts of the country, but like it doesn't mean the same, or doesn't have the same intonation or
It could mean 30
expectation.
different things depending on how you use it, right?
Yeah.
We need to recap. We need a guide for an instruction manual for Cuban coffee. We need a cheat sheet of all of the different ways and meanings of the word bro. What else? What else is helpful for we've all lived here forever, but for someone coming over.
I think on this whole 5 phrases, there's still a couple phrases we haven't covered that are critical to understanding. I mean, one is this mythical creature that we refer to as a pata sucia. That is a being similar to a Sasquatch or a Yeti that, since we're in Florida, a skunk ape, right? That people have heard of, but you don't understand what it is until you see it at 8 a.m. on South Beach, leaving Live or Basement or one of these other clubs. And I mean,
Basement closed. My favorite.
Oh well, in normal times, in pre-COVID times, leaving the club, and we'll just use club generically, right? Whether it's Space or 11 or any of these other things. So pata sucia is this mythic creature that roams the neighborhood.
We have to define it, though. There's some people listening to this that still have no idea what we're talking about. Who wants to take a shot at defining pata sucia?
Start with the literal definition of what it means, pata sucia.
I mean, the literal definition is dirty feet. Or dirty foot, right? And the question is, let your imagination run wild a little bit for a bit there. But I think Maria should explain to the foreigners, the non-Miamians, what a pata sucia actually is.
Well, okay, to be fair, as the only woman on this podcast, heels can hurt. And after a whole night of wearing them, I have to say, I have one New Year's Eve where I remember walking back and I was just like, screw it, I'm taking my shoes off. And I was a pata sucia that night.
But there's a tech and startup hook tying into the pata sucia movement, right? There was a startup a few years back by Dawn Dixon, right? Where she started vending machines at clubs that sold like little slip-on shoes. So women could avoid being pata sucias.
I have a flat out of heels.
Safely, flat out heels, right? So,
in the future, when there's Miami Tech Pod merch, there may or may not have to be a pata sucia t-shirt. I don't know. We'll have to figure this out. This is episode 1. We're still figuring these things out. But so if someone sees a pata sucia, what's etiquette here, right? Like what does one do in do you look away? Do you take out your phone and like memorialize this really rare occasion? Like what does one do here, Maria?
Oh, well, I think you can have a chuckle, but I'm hesitant to shame anyone for it.
I mean, I thought you were supposed to record it and then submit it to Only in Dade on Instagram.
That's the move, probably. Although you out yourself, right? Because if you're submitting it, they're reposting it, they see your handle, that pata sucia is going to know they've been exposed by you on Instagram. There's no stealth way of doing it.
Right.
Well, what the other one is when people say the phrase, "This is a mission," what does that mean, Will?
A mission is just like it's too much to deal with right now. Like, oh, that's gonna be a mission. Oh, we got to launch a podcast. Oh, bro, that's a mission.
We're combining phrases.
Yeah, I mean that's it. That's the Miami phrase right there, bro. That's a mission right now. I got too much on my plate. Let's circle back at a later date about that. So
it's a tall order.
It's a tall order. It's a mish, and you can truncate that to mish if you feel so inclined. So
Also, going back to how geographically spread out we are, like, yeah, going to Kendall and at any time
that's a mission.
3 o'clock is a mission.
That's
Driving far places is a mission.
The Paul Ghetto is a mission. Every time you have to drive down that expressway, right, in rush hour traffic, that's a mission.
The Palmetto may be an episode 2 topic. That's too much.
We're trying to attract people to Miami, so we'll save that one for later.
Awesome. So, shifting gears a little bit, there's like I said earlier, there's a lot of excitement around here, but we're also, a lot of people are kind of feeling that we're definitely towards the end of the global pandemic, right? That this is a matter kind of months and quarters, not additional years. And with the vaccine rolling out, there's somewhat of the end in sight here. And I think there's we have people in Miami who've already been vaccinated. We certainly they're targeted to older folks and at risk individuals, but what do you all think the Miami tech community is going to look like, feel like post-COVID? Brian?
I mean, look, in true Miami fashion, I think we need to throw a killer party, right? I mean, all this pent up energy of people wanting to socialize and meet and, and have a Cuba Libre, or whatever. I think that's going to be the first thing we plan, right? Like, how do we get everybody back together and hopefully not cause a super spreader event, and celebrate, right? Celebrate that we came out of this the other end alive, and celebrate that there's all this renewed interest in our community and people who aren't immediately dismissing Miami as a option, right? And so
yeah, Maria, you've been kind of a convener, and you have Brian as well, but of a ton of networking events in Miami. Do you think that kind of when do you think that starts again? Right, like when do you think in-person events are going to start? Is there going to be a hesitancy in the beginning? Have they already happened in underground locations? Like what are your thoughts of like the in-person networking aspect of the Miami tech community?
I think they've started in very small, controlled outdoor ways. I think even just recently, I'm feeling like people are more wanting to even do coffee meetings. I think everyone's just kind of, it's also beautiful outside right now. We want to kind of enjoy that. So I think they're starting to happen very small, controlled. And then in terms of the big ones, I would say maybe the summer, if that. But going back to kind of I think for those of you who are new here, we love to, like, the way we greet is to kiss each other on the cheek, which is probably way beyond just shaking a hand. It's like, I think we're probably all feeling like, oh, we miss hugging people. We're a very affectionate city. So I think we're all going to be just excited to go back to our normal greetings.
And how important is that, right? Like in many ways, you all saw very, early on that power of networking, that power of like helping each other out in a market that has traditionally not had unlimited resources to, founders and operators of tech companies here. But how much does that convening power kind of translate into a successful startup ecosystem? Will, what are your thoughts?
It's really TBD at the moment. I mean, we know what things look like in a pre-COVID world, and we knew how important serendipity was, and being in these places where you could have these, these collisions with other founders and people that are like-minded. That's what, there was a lot of effort to make that Wynwood, with the efforts around the lab and things like that, and all the different co-working spaces. Obviously in downtown, places like Building and Pipeline and things like that are building, and also now Mana and what they're building there as well. That's important, and I don't think that will ever kind of go away. I do see it more as a hybrid situation. I think people will be working from home a lot more. I'm very curious to see how we build tech hubs and build community in a post-COVID world. I think it was one thing to do this and figure this out as we go while we're in the middle of a pandemic, because we had to. But once the majority of people get the vaccine and it's available for the masses, how do we mix that in, and how do we mix in person with virtual? I'm really curious. I don't think we all have our hypothesis of what that's going to look like, whether that's 3 weeks at home and then 2 weeks. 3 days a week at home and then 2 days a week in the office. There will be some kind of hybrid solution. Who knows what the timeline on that is? And we're going to have to figure out in real time how to build a successful collaborative local ecosystem in this new world together. And part of that is exciting because we're all learning at the same time. Everybody that's coming in now to Miami has to come in with a completely open mind to not say, this is how it worked in Silicon Valley, this is how it worked in New York. Well, everything is thrown out the window now. We're all figuring this out together. So that is also a little bit scary, but I think it's more so exciting because the playing field has been even and we all want the same thing. We all want to see things get back to where they were. And I think also we have a bigger focus now on efficiency and just getting things done and making less excuses than ever before. So I think it's a net positive when you take those things in consideration.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I think you were interviewing on your podcast Matt Hagman about kind of that, his efforts to bring people together in person who were all kind of interested in entrepreneurship and in tech and building really cool companies, but were a bit, not connected to folks. You have a clip of that?
Yeah, definitely. Matt, he was a guest on my podcast, Lessons Via Leaders. And, Matt, obviously a pioneer here in the local Miami tech community, managing director at Knight Foundation a few years back, and laid the foundation for a lot of the things that are happening now. I think it's all fair to say that a lot of the fruit that Miami is experiencing wouldn't be happening if it wasn't for the foundation that Knight and Matt and Raul have done. Matt brings up a great point, and I have a clip here that I'll share with you guys on engaging the local community and how Knight went about doing that.
What are some of those lessons that you've learned as far as community engagement?
I think it's all about meeting people where they are. And that's the way, I tried to go about my job at Knight Foundation. Is that I think it's built on constant community engagement, right? Because weekends, evenings, all of that.
Yep.
But that's really important. Like one of the things started doing is would do just a breakfast every 2 weeks.
I remember that.
Where and that started. It started first to solve a problem that I was figuring out how to solve, and that was I was getting a lot of requests from people saying, "So what are you up to in Miami? What's this effort around supporting entrepreneurship?" And so I found I was having lots of meetings where I was sort of running through saying the same things.
Right.
And I found I could fill up a week doing that.
Yeah.
So I thought to myself, well, what about, all these meetings? What about if we just picked a time, every other week where, could talk about, with a group, not too big enough so everyone could participate in the conversation, a round table.
Yep.
And I could share what we're up to, but then get feedback.
Yeah.
And then meanwhile, the people who are there, they can connect with each other. Right, the whole effort was built on the idea that we at Knight Foundation, myself, we don't know where the best ideas are. Right, and so it's all about being open to as many people as possibly can.
And I think Matt brings up a great point. It's about being as open to as many people as possible, and that spirit that they had back when things were quote unquote normal, I think will persist in a post-COVID world. But I'm curious to get your thoughts on what Matt said and how it applies.
Yeah, I think I worked at Uber for nearly 4 years, and I went to San Francisco quite a bit, several times a year to collaborate with my peers in that company. And every single time I was in San Francisco, and Uber was headquartered, or is still headquartered, on Market Street next to Twitter and Square and a lot of these companies that the city kind of incentivized to move over there on that street. And there was a little bit, in my feeling, and I could be wrong, but there was a little bit of segmentation, right? There was a little bit of like, you go into the office, you hang out with Uber people all day, you leave the office and grab cocktails with people that work at Uber all day, and then after that you go home, right? And there was not this kind of like collaborative cross company environment that I think exists here, and for the most part, you all built over the last decade here. Brian, do you think that we risk that type of segmentation moving forward if we do see a ton of people that culturally are familiar with, Silicon Valley's tech community moving here to Miami?
No, I think our biggest risk, which has always been the case, has been geography, right? So it's near impossible to convince someone who's working out in Weston or working for Citrix up in Fort Lauderdale to participate in after work, happy hours and stuff like that, right? And so there is a ton of value in the density, and the accessibility of events and being in central locations and near where, like as Matt said, going where the people are, right? And so I think that the other thing is like the number of people actually moving here from San Francisco or Silicon Valley is minuscule compared to the overall population of our city, right? So we've got a culture, and I think we'll have more impact on others than they will on our culture. But that's just my 2 cents on that.
Yeah, I think going kind of with the whole how spread out everything is again, one thing that we're working on at Refresh is bringing more of the in-person community and all the magic that happens there into like the digital space. And so quick plug, we're going to be launching something in Q1 to kind of help folks, find like-minded individuals regardless of like, do they live in Weston? Do they live up in Fort Lauderdale? Do they live in Kendall? Like, how do you find like-minded individuals and how do you connect with them in a meaningful way? How do you kind of share knowledge across the whole ecosystem? Because I think that's going to go a long way in helping connect folks and even create these kind of help bringing some of these micro communities online and connecting with each other.
You heard it here first. Maria is building a Facebook killer to connect, people across Miami. She's going to test it to see if it works in Miami, and then look out, Mark Zuckerberg. She's coming for you.
Hardly.
Awesome. Anything anyone else wants to, just generally speaking, any thoughts around the Great Migration? Anything we feel like we're missing here?
I'll just add real quick, then I'll let you go, Brian. I think one of the most special things about this community that I was fortunate enough to experience over the past few years is how open and welcoming and collaborative this community is. There's a special warmth that comes with Miami, and I don't mean that literally from the weather. This community is very, very warm and welcoming. I think it's because it's a city built on immigrants and transplants. That entrepreneurial spirit is so alive in this city. It's part of the DNA of Miami. I would just want to encourage any newcomer to just dive right into the community and reach out to folks like Brian and Maria at Refresh, or anybody else in the community that's very active on Twitter, because everybody kind of wants to pay it forward. It's very much a rising tide lifts all ships kind of community. And I know not all communities have been like that over the past few years, and I don't want the past experiences to kind of come into Miami. Definitely approach Miami with a fresh mind and kind of open arms, and it'll show itself right back in the same way. So I feel indebted to the city for that warmth, and I just want to see it paid forward for all newcomers to experience as well.
Yeah, on that, following on to that, I think one of the interesting takeaways from all this is also that this is spurring a lot more collaboration amongst the locals, right? There's so much energy of the locals who don't want to fuck this up, who don't want to lose this momentum and lose this energy. And so we're seeing collaboration across silos that we never saw before, because we were all sort of content with the status quo. And now that we see that there's, we can sort of ratchet it all up to the next echelon or whatever, you're seeing people who rarely ever interacted with each other, putting out content, putting out organizing events and doing all sorts of things. I mean, look, this podcast is a byproduct of that, right? So I think that's what excites me the most about this. The fact that the people who've got a passion and invested in this city are going to be sort of re-energized, and hopefully we see amazing things that come out of this, regardless of whether or not we get 10,000 new residents or 50,000 new residents?
Yeah, I just wanted to add to that. One thing I want folks who are moving here to understand is we're not saying we're perfect. We have a ton of things that we need to work on. And we would love for, folks to come in and help us work on those. I think the benefit of Miami is we're still pretty young, and we, if you put your hand up, people are saying, let you go and run with things. So I think there's this excitement around being able to impact change here that you might not get in some of these kind of already very established ecosystems.
Awesome. I think with that, we'll wrap up episode 1 of the Miami Tech Pod. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the show on iTunes, Spotify, and Google Podcasts. Also, please visit us on miamitechpod.com and follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn at Miami Tech Pod. Last, please share this episode with anyone who's interested in learning more about the Miami Tech community, and have a great day.